In this video I'm painting a picture of a tractor that's parked down the road from my house, a few kilometres away from my house, and I've driven past this subject a few times, and actually I've painted these buildings a couple of times over the last few years, but not from this perspective. And so I've decided to stop and paint this subject. It's a Sunday morning, probably about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm set up on the side of a road. It's not too busy traffic wise, so it should be okay. There may be a couple of cars go past, but I've managed to get into a pretty good spot and managed to set a camera up and what have you. So I'm just laying in the subject now, and there's a lot going on, a lot of different lines, perspective lines, and I've got to try and get the size of the objects and the placement of the objects correct to make the painting read well. And I'm just kind of blocking it in with a small bristle brush and some medium on my on the brush, and very thin oil paint, and just trying to lay in the larger objects in the painting and try and get them all in the correct position. And sometimes you get this wrong and you have to wipe parts of it out and do it again, and sometimes you'll see me probably change the colour on my brush and maybe make some different lines that I intend to follow instead of the colours that I've got there now, because I've made a mistake in the initial blocking. When you go and paint outside like this, it's very challenging because your eye can see further than the image, if you understand what I mean. You have to try and learn to block out. You have to try and figure out where the edges of the image are going to be, and it can be very overwhelming, and for quite some time when you first start painting outside it can be a problem. You get this overwhelm, not really understanding exactly where the painting starts and stops when you're sketching it in. And it's a good idea to use a viewfinder when you first start and really get an idea of where the objects are within that viewfinder, and map out some points of reference on your canvas so you can figure out, for example, where the edge of a roof would go, or how high something is, or even sometimes it's a good idea to mark the centre of the centre horizontally and the centre vertically, and figure out from there with your viewfinder where something is in relation to a centre line, because you're not exactly graphing it in, you are sketching it freehand, and you've got to try and get things in the right place and the right size. You can see I think I've actually moved that line at the edge of that building. I think I had it in the wrong place. But anyway, I'm sketching away and taking my time, because it is a very complex scene to put in. And these aren't really the most complex items in the painting, because there is a tractor going in there as well. And I haven't, at this stage, probably may have painted one tractor before. In all my years of painting, it's not something I paint very often. So it's always good to give yourself a fresh challenge and a new subject, and see how you get on, see how you get on with it. When you paint outside like I do, quite often you get interrupted by people wandering past, or you'll have cars stop and talk to you, or people stop and talk to you, and they're usually pretty nice. Occasionally you might get someone say something a little strange. I've had that a few times, but that's all part of the fun. I do enjoy talking to people when I'm out painting, and I've had many things happen to me on the side of the road. I've had car accidents happen next to me, and I've had people fall over and hurt themselves because they weren't looking where they were walking. I've had sprinklers turned on me in the park, Yeah, many interesting things have happened over the years. And I do remember a funny story from one of New Zealand's kind of early painters, Douglas Badcock. He was painting on the side of the road in our town, which is a tourist town, and this would have been around about 1970, maybe 1980, and some tourists got off a bus and they all started coming up and talking to him, and he lost his concentration, and after a while he got so frustrated with that he packed up his gear and decided to move somewhere else. So he drove out of town and he set up his easel behind some trees and on a bit of farmland down out of our town, and he was just getting into his painting, blocking it in and just starting a painting, and a top dressing plane flew over and dropped a whole lot of superphosphate on top of him. So he decided at that point it was time to go home and maybe give it another go the next day. So that's one of the funny things that can happen, when you're outside painting. Oh, I'm starting to block the tractor in now, and there's a few angles on this tractor, and I guess it's about, well, it might be 100 feet away from me. It's quite hard to see everything, so you really have to try and put in what you can see and not be too caught up in all the finer details. And I've just launched ahead now and started to get a bit of grass colour on there. So when I start painting outside like I have, I usually try and get my darkest darks established early and have an idea of where my lightest light's going to be and my sharpest edge is going to be in the painting, and try and keep the colours fairly thin until I'm well into the painting and have the block and the sketch of the painting established. See, I'm just trying to figure out here. I think wondering if I've made a mistake with the size of this tank. It's a silo. And so I was just looking probably at the silo and having a little think about that when you saw me rubbing my brush on the edge where I think the edge of that silo needs to go. When you paint outside, you're under pressure and the sun is moving and things can happen. Insects can get stuck in your paint and the wind can come up. Quite often I find that if you use a big brush, like a 1-inch brush, you can cover the surface of the canvas much faster and take a bit of pressure off yourself by getting the bigger areas filled in with paint early on. If you do use a small brush for the whole painting, you will get very tired, and that's when you start making mistakes. In fact, just recently I've been out painting and I've been using a 1-inch brush, and I've got some fairly large paintings done quite quickly, and they're fairly good. They're quite painterly. I'm not unhappy with them in any way, so that's a good sign. And also the other thing, of course, is you really have to keep your brushes clean between mixes, and I use probably 5 to 7 brushes in a painting, maybe more. And quite often, if I get a bit tired, I will stop and I will wash my brushes out. And usually in the last kind of 20 minutes of a painting or half an hour of a painting, I will clean my palette down and I will put fresh colours out and I'll clean my brushes and dry them again, and I'll just make sure everything is ready for the final assault, if you like. That way, when I'm mixing highlight colours, they're clean and I can lay some nice clean colour on top of things, and I don't have to fight for mixing room. And I will say that when you're painting for a long stretch outside, say you've been at it for 2.5 hours and you're getting tired, there is a temptation to try and make a colour out of paint on the palette that's not really going to achieve its goal because you're weary, and really what you need to do is stop and have that clean up and refresh your colours so you have got everything available to dip into and mix the colours you want. And I still fight with that quite regularly. I'll think to myself, actually, Simon, you're being lazy, you're getting tired, have a clean up, set up some fresh colour, and have another go at that, because what you've just done wasn't very flash, I'll tell myself. So, you know, we do talk to ourselves a little bit and give ourselves a pep talk now and again, and but it's a good way of getting a good result at the end, I suppose. Just putting a bit of sky colour in there now, and quite happy to go over the edges of objects with the sky. And this easel I'm using is a homemade easel, and it's made from fiberglass painter's poles. It has aluminium sliders in the bottoms of the poles to get the height of the easel, and all the fittings that are on the easel I've made myself. So there's some steel fittings on there and some wooden fittings, and I call it the wind easel. It's very good in the wind. I will say, when I very first started using it, I had a painting blown off into my face, and I had to change the angle of these little steel rods that the painting sits on at the bottom, and at the moment they are tipping up towards, they're tipping up slightly at the bottom, and it's impossible for the painting to slide out of there. You couldn't pull it out by hand, actually. They just get very, very tight. So now it's not going to get blown into my face. But I was out painting on a very windy day, extremely windy, probably too windy to be painting, and the painting blew off into my face, and it hit me in the head, in the face and in the head 4 times before I could catch it. And it was very funny. I had a woolen hat on, and when I finally wrestled this painting and got control of it and put it back on the easel, I had a look at my hat, and I had green grass all over my head, so it was funny. And I had some people stop and talk to me soon after, and I think I still had paint all over my face. So the joys of outdoor painting. I'm starting to make some progress now. Quite liking the light coloured silo with the green top, and it's actually quite tricky painting corrugated iron and making it look like corrugated iron. It's a grey colour, obviously, but getting it to look round and getting it to have the lines in it, I don't fuss over it too much, actually. I know if you were painting, you know, if you're trying to get photorealism in your work, you would have to work a lot harder than I'm working here, but I'm treating this as a sketch and trying to get just a nice painterly result. Just trying to sharpen the edge up on that now with a palette knife. There we go. I've picked up a bit of the white and dragged it into the tree, and I think that's going to be annoying me. This painting that I'm doing this voiceover on right now, I painted this probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So I'm really just remembering the process as I talk you through this. And the painting was actually quite pretty when it was finished. Although I will say I felt like the tractor was squatting a little bit at the back, as if the wheels were a little bit too low. On the big wheels on the tractor were a little bit small, And from memory, I think I actually got a palette knife and scraped that area back before it was dry so I can touch it up again. And I've never got it out and touched it up since, but I will do. I have a good photo of it, and I think I'll get it out one day and spend an hour just tidying it up and just make it, so I'm really happy with it. And then I can let it dry and get some varnish on it and put it in a frame. Beautiful, colourful painting. And the brushwork's just very painterly. And you can see how I'm trying to keep everything clean with the paint. Even though I'm painting in amongst other colours. Just trying to get some tread on the tyres. And you try, I have to rework those wheels and make them look like they're round. That looks like a squash donut, really, that one at the moment. But I know I do rework them and get them looking a bit better. But this is part of the challenge of working outside. And yeah, as you can see, I've worked on it a bit more now and it's coming better. Just starting to cut in around that tractor, around the tyres and the undercarriage of the tractor now, and trying to keep my brush clean and not pick up too much of the colour that's already been applied down there. I'm sure I'll be wiping my brush off probably between brush strokes and re-establishing the colour on the brush so it does stay clean. I can still remember this day. It's funny when you paint outside like I do. Quite often the experience seems to get burned into your memory. I can pick up paintings that I painted years ago and still, remember the process of painting it. I do remember one day painting an old wool shed, probably about an hour away from my home. And it was a windy day, and I was standing underneath some power lines. And the power lines, I may have even mentioned this on another video, the wind was blowing so strong. I was sheltered by trees, and my easel was pretty stable, but the wind was blowing so strong that the power lines were making this eerie ghost noise. It was kind of a bit off-putting. The noise was a bit spooky, it was quite funny. And I have painted behind pine trees before where I was worried the trees were going to get blown over. It was that windy, so quite a few times I'm hiding behind a hedge and just stepping out to see what I'm painting and then stepping behind the hedge again to put the painting together because the wind's so strong. And I know more recently in the last 2 years I've started tying my easel down nearly all the time. The last couple of paintings I haven't because it's winter here now, and it's I don't know if you've noticed, but the weather's usually in New Zealand anyway. It's pretty calm and quiet in the winter. We get a lot of winds in the summer, but our winters can be pretty still, and you get beautiful reflections on lakes and things like that. So winter's a great time to be out painting, and of course your shadows are longer. They can last all day. They go across the ground. There's always interesting shadows. Yeah, winter's a good time to paint. I think I painted this probably in the summertime, this painting. And I'm reworking a few parts of the tractor because I've probably destroyed them a little bit putting that grass in. Just a bit of highlight colour around the rim of the wheel. You can see I'm still trying to get that round, that wheel the right shape, the right sort of shape for the angle that the wheel's on. And I do know that with black, it's interesting painting black outside. I think I'm yet to master this yet, where you a lot of the light areas, and say a black tyre or a black cow are a great example. Black cows, for example, when you see the light on them, they quite often look like there's a yellow ochre kind of grey on the cow. The sunlight's, it's like the top of the cow isn't necessarily black, even though it's a black animal. And it has this reflected light on it, and quite often you look at it and you kind of go, well, it looks like it's a grey, it's probably got some black in it, but it looks kind of yellow, so it's probably got some yellow ochre in it, and it's one of those grey colours. Greys can be very hard to figure out sometimes, and usually, in fact, if you're struggling with a colour, it probably is a grey, and so, I mean, I've noticed some other artists that I watch online when they paint outside, I think they do a far better job of that light, the kind of highlight area on the animal. You've got to paint the animal so it still looks round. The body of the animal's still got some shape to it. You've got to put the light on it so it looks convincing and believable. And you've got to get that light the right colour, and you've got to get the edge quality on that light correct. So there's a lot going on. And I think if you don't get it right, your animals can look a bit stuck on. So the edge quality, that's usually edge quality that causes that problem. If you look at a painting and you think, oh, that object looks stuck onto the picture. It looks like it's not amalgamated into the rest of the paint, almost like it's a piece of paper that's been glued on, a picture that's been glued onto the surface, and that's usually an edge quality problem. And I think edges they're interesting to try and master, because when you look at something, if it's silhouetted into the light or it's quite a dark object and it's reasonably close and its edges are quite sharp, you're not inclined to break those edges up and soften them possibly as much as you could. And I think this is an area I'm still working into, where I want to start pushing that whole manipulating of edges a lot more, trying to figure out how far I can go to make the painting more believable. And in fact, paintings with really interesting edge quality can look far more believable, and they don't look as fiddly and even overworked. And I've got a couple of paintings in my collection here that I've done that I look at them and I go, man, the edges are so hard on that painting. They don't quite look stuck on, but they're getting very close to it. I think maybe there's something wrong with those, and I'd love to just get some inspirations from some other good artists who are really, really good at painting edges, and maybe experiment a bit more on the edge quality. So, that's the thing with painting. I think I'm a reasonably good painter, but I've still got plenty to learn, and probably in another 20 years' time I'll be saying the same thing, And I've been painting now since probably 1987 or something like that, so many years, and painting outside for 26 years pretty consistently. And I don't know how many paintings I've done, but it's in the thousands probably. And I've destroyed a lot of paintings, I know that much, so they don't all work out, and quite often I'll still go out now and do a painting and go home with my tail between my legs because it hasn't worked out. It's a failure, and you kind of go, oh, part of the problem when that happens is you go out to paint and you think to yourself, this is going to be easy, because I'm so experienced or whatever, and you don't consider how difficult it's going to be. You think all your years of experience have got you to a point where you're not going to struggle, but it doesn't work like that. You can paint for 30 years like I have and go out and struggle and go home with nothing. That's the challenge, and I think that's why we keep doing it. It's not easy. There's a huge amount of value in being able to do something extremely well. And learning to paint, even to the level I'm doing here, has taken me a long time, thousands of hours. Here's a photo of the finished painting now. I do like the look of it. I love the blues. I love that little hit of red on the front of the tractor against the green grass. It's pretty nice. It's a lovely painting. I want to thank you for watching this. I'd love it if you subscribe to my channel. I'll be uploading more content shortly. And you can see my work on simonkramer.art. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.